Matthew 28:19 says, "Go therefore and disciple all the nations, baptizing them into the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit." Fulfilling the Great Commission and bringing the testimony of Jesus to every nation, tribe, and tongue necessarily means our learning to interact with all kinds of people. This is a series of 5 videos that are going to act as a practical guide to contacting people for the sake of the gospel. The 5 topics we're going to cover are: number 1, initial contact; number 2, normal conversation; number 3, turning conversations to the Lord; number 4, leading people to Christ; and number 5, proper follow-up. May the Lord bless our prayerful practice and proclamation of the Jubilee on all our college campuses in the upcoming year. We want to become people who meet people. We cannot lead others to Christ unless we first meet them, just as Jesus met all kinds of people throughout the 4 Gospels. The goal of our first contact with any person is to have a second contact with them. I repeat, the goal of our first contact with our gospel candidates is to have a second contact. That means they have to actually desire a second contact with us. Whether it's friend, family, acquaintances, we want them to walk away from our time together feeling engaged, welcomed, liked in a potentially frightening social situation. When it comes to people and relationships and events, we usually don't remember the content of what was spoken. That is, we don't remember exactly what was said. What we remember is how those people or experiences made us feel. We want them walking away saying, "Wow, I really liked that person. I liked talking to them. I hope that happens again." But understand this. Studies show that we only have 7 seconds or less to make such a first impression. I want to say that again. We only have 7 seconds or less to make such a first impression. Now, you may be wondering, what can I actually say or do in 7 seconds or less to make a good impression with my gospel friend? And that's the point. You can't say much or do much within that time frame of 7 seconds or less. 93% of first impressions are made non-verbally, not verbally. Meaning, it's not the words that we actually say that make first impressions with people. It's our body language, it's our clothing, it's our posture, it's our tone, it's our smile, it's our eye contact, our facial expressions, our gestures, our attitude, even our day-to-day hygiene. With first impressions, it's not mainly what we say, it's how we are. Now, don't think this is too shallow or that it's something superficial. Remember, we are ambassadors of Christ. Just as the Apostle Paul tells us, we're representing God before men and we're beseeching men to be reconciled to God. People's first impression of us may be their first impression of Him. So that's why our initial contact with people is so immensely important. So question, what can we actually do within 7 seconds of our initial contact with someone? What can we actually do? 2 things. Number 1, we can shake their hand. And number 2, we can introduce ourselves. A good handshake instills confidence, trustworthiness, and leaves a lasting impression with someone. All right, now we want to cover how to shake hands. I'm going to bring Connor on camera to help me. To shake hands, we want to reach forward with our right hand, not our left hand. And we want our right hand to be open with our thumb pointing upward. We want to avoid coming in from the side or maybe doing something we might do with our friends back home. Remember, we're going to be contacting people a lot of times for the first time. So we want them to be clear what kind of handshake we're going for. So we want to have our right hand open with our thumb pointing upward to make that clear. We want to fully expose the web of our hand. This is the web of our hand. And we want to make web-to-web contact with the other person. Web-to-web contact. The reason this is important is because if you don't make web-to-web contact before wrapping your fingers and squeezing, what you may end up doing is squeezing too early. This doesn't feel good. It leaves an unfavorable impression with the other person. Or you may just miss their hand altogether if you don't make web-to-web contact and end up shaking their forearm. This also would leave an unfavorable impression. So we want to aim for web-to-web contact. After making web-to-web contact, we wrap our fingers and squeeze. The strength of our squeeze should be like you're holding a hammer or an umbrella. You want to avoid being so strong that you crush the other person or try to intimidate them. Nor do you want to be so weak and limp that it's as if you're shaking a dead fish. That also would be an unfavorable impression for the sake of the gospel. To end our handshake, you simply pump once or twice and disconnect. We don't want to be people who continually hold on and keep them there throughout the conversation. That would be an unfavorable impression for the sake of the gospel. Thank you, Connor. Now what we want to do is we want to stop and practice. We're going to practice shaking hands with everyone in your small group as if you're meeting them for the first time. Afterward, we want to briefly evaluate with one another as a group how those handshakes went. Remember, we're trying to get better at this. So you have to actually pretend you've never met the people in your small group before and think about this. How was my strength? How was my partner's strength in their handshake? Was it too strong? Was it too weak? What kind of impression did that give me? How did I feel about that? Did I hit web-to-web contact before wrapping my fingers around and squeezing? Was my hand open? Was my thumb upward? Was it clear, the kind of handshake that I was going for? After you finish evaluating with one another how those handshakes went, remember you want to shake hands with everyone in the room, practice shaking everyone's hand again, okay? Then I want you to return to the video and we'll progress forward. So question, what did you say to one another as you shook hands? This last segment is going to focus in on introducing ourselves as we shake hands. And remember, these may be the only words that you get before your gospel candidate instantly forms a first impression of you that may be hard to change later on. So these words, introducing ourselves within the framework of 7 seconds, is very important. Repeat after me. Hi, my name is blank. What's your name? Okay, now I want you to try it again and actually insert your name in there. Hi, my name is blank. What's your name? Keep repeating these 2 sentences until it becomes second nature to you. I want you to think about this. How would you approach someone on campus and initiate a conversation with them if you've never met them before? What would you do if you wanted to engage someone regarding the gospel? How would you start that conversation? These 2 sentences gives you a solid, comfortable way to initiate and begin that conversation. Now, I want you to wait for their response and use their name in the next sentence by saying, so-and-so, nice to meet you. These 3 sentences will give you a way to start a conversation with any person in your life in a comfortable, non-threatening way every time. Remember, speak loud and clear so that the person can hear you. We want to portray confidence, warmth, and openness. Using their name will help you remember their name and will help you convey a personal interaction. All right, now we want to stop and practice initiating conversation with someone by shaking their hands and introducing ourselves. You can alternate with your partner, allowing each person the opportunity to initiate contact. And once you've both done this, you can switch partners. I want you to do this with everyone in your small group. Remember, use the introduction lines conveyed in the video, and then after you're done, talk about what you learned and how one another can improve.